So welcome everyone. We are so excited to start this new webinar series, CreArt webinar series, and it's a product of a lot of different inspirations and prayers, and just really the work of the Spirit moving in and through the movement, but really the whole world and really the church. I think many of us have seen and probably been inspired ourselves in these past few months. Corona, just kind of looking at different things looking at things in a different way, and especially how we express ourselves. So I know even connected with the movement and around, there's been so many expressions of that through music, through artwork, through podcasts. And so really this webinar is kind of a way to respond to these new inspirations of the Spirit, a way to kind of nurture that and to encourage that. We're so excited to see what the Lord is going to do in all of our lives, in all of our hearts, and all of the beautiful things that the Lord is asking us and inviting us to create. So we are doing a 5-part webinar series, and as all of you know, as a movement, we are called to be missionary, and hopefully this series will be a way that we can all be encouraged personally and inspired to listen to the voice of the Lord, and hopefully learn many new things that will aid in that process. So Melissa and I will be your facilitators for tonight. And Melissa will be inviting our speaker for this evening. Just a few housekeeping things. If you have any questions or if you have any insights, you can chat to Melissa, and we'll be sharing them at a later point. We'll have a question and answer session. And if anything kind of stuck out at you or struck you as impressive or insightful, you can also share that as well. We'll be kind of sharing those in between the questions. So go ahead, Melissa.
Hello, can everyone hear me? So there are many things about Shelton, but here is a few of the things that we wanted to capture and kind of start off with. He is the creative director in advertising and works on a lot of interesting brands, and he's also the executive creative director of Stark Communications. On top of that, he also leads a lot of creative teams in Moonjar Communications. Sorry, my thing just went out. And if that wasn't enough, he also writes poetry, songs, is the lead vocalist in our band called Rex Band, if some of you know that. He also plays the guitar, is working on a novel. And so this is just maybe some of the few things that he's involved with, but I don't want to keep talking. I will hand it over to Sheldon for more about what you are going to share with us, and a little bit more about what you do and how art has kind of led your life.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Thank you, all of you. Thank you, everyone. It's quite early here, but it's beautiful to be here this morning and to see all of you together. And I think it's amazing that this crisis, and it is a difficult time for many people around the world, but in some way, in a sense, it is this time that has made this possible. So in that sense, it is beautiful also. So I welcome all of you to this time. I will take probably, as Melissa shared, I work in advertising, and I've been, my encounter with God has been through my journey with the Jesus Youth movement, and a lot of work that I have done in terms of which involves creativity, which involves writing, art, has also been with the movement, with the Jesus Youth movement. So it is a beautiful thing that there's something new that's opening up here, and I'm glad to be with all of you. I will start sharing my screen now, if that's okay. Yeah. So from India. It is good morning, but for you, it's not good morning, but still. I wanted to start with this because this is a phrase that has been with me for a long time. Soli Deo Gloria, to God alone be glory. It is something that I realized when in the early 2000s, there was a band in the Christian space. I don't know if they're still there, but John Stemkowski's Celebrant Singers. They're a beautiful, amazing band, and they were a band that we followed a lot as we were a young group of musicians in one corner of India, and we were trying to come together as a group and slowly singing songs and coming together as a group at that time. And this band was from the US, and they were visiting different parts of India, and they came to Kerala. And we, as a Rex band, we were the ones who were taking care of them in the sense, carrying the stuff around and bringing food to them and all that. And one of them, when she was on stage, she shared, and all of them were amazing musicians. Many of them were like they were from different schools. They had masters in music composition. So we were like, trying to draw as much as we can, trying to stay close to them so that something gets into us through by osmosis or something like that. Trying to get, because it's very difficult to get trained in India, very difficult to get trained in music, to learn. And we were mostly struggling with our lives and trying to also to understand music, to share, to express us in different ways and all that. So then this lady, she spoke. She was an amazing musician. She said, musicians like two musicians, she specifically said, I remember, Johann Sebastian Bach and Handel. They were two great musicians, and maybe one of the very few musicians that classical musicians that we would recognize at that time. So she was saying all of their compositions, they signed off with this Soli Deo Gloria, which is anything that we create, may God have all the glory. And it's a difficult thing to say. And as musicians, we were just beginning to realize that. I myself, I was struggling with the whole thing of I am singing the song and I am on stage, and this I thing was coming out in a very powerful way at that time. And so I thought it was for them to say that is in a way is to open up a dialogue with themselves, and also say that there is something larger. There is something that I do not see. It is not I create, but it's not just about me. So there's some kind of a larger thing within that, and that was something that struck me. And I started writing Soli Deo Gloria whenever I started a new notebook. I write a lot, and I write physically, mostly in small notebooks. So I have like around here behind me, there's a rack full of notebooks that I've been carrying around from the last 10-15 years. So every time I buy a new book, on the top I write Soli Deo Gloria, more because I need it more every day. And so this is something I think is a very good place to start. And scattered thoughts on art, creativity, and faith. So that is a subhead I have. And it's scattered because it's 4:30 in the morning, and generally I'm scattered. It's also scattered because I'm known as a scatterbrain. So even if I try to say it in order, it'll come out scattered. So it'll be scattered thoughts. And thirdly, it's also because, I have no clue what I'm getting into, because it's perhaps one of the first attempts in Jesus Youth to really think about creativity, art, and all that. So it is an interesting thing, and I am just trying to put together thoughts that are buzzing around me. So it will be scattered. So that's why it's scattered. And here we have Bach and Handel in their beautiful wigs and all that, just for us to get an So that's the history lesson. But let's start there, and let us also give glory that this is possible, that we perhaps from different states, from different nations are here, and we are somehow at this point in history, at this point, we are seeing that there is something powerful that God is trying to do through us, through the movement, through this beautiful space of art, creativity, faith, all that. So let's give thanks to God and move on. It also reminds us that there was a time when mainstream creativity and art were inextricably linked with faith and with Christianity, with religion, with God. That there was a clear link. If we go back, into a certain time, we see that here we can see Caravaggio's. It is the Calling of Matthew and Michelangelo. So and the Pietà. So all of these were like mainstream artworks. It was something like perhaps it would be like Bollywood or Hollywood kind of productions, something like that. It is there, out there. It is right there in the cultural space, and it is linked with God. So at one point, creativity and art were inextricably linked, but definitely not so. And now when we look at it, perhaps I think the most quoted document around this would be the Letter to Artists by St. John Paul II. And in one part he says, there is another kind of humanism marked by the absence of God, and often by, and perhaps even an opposition to God. And it has gradually asserted itself in an atmosphere. And there has been a separation of the world of art and world of faith. So this kind of a dichotomy has come into, and I remember when I came into advertising, and it's not like I knew what advertising was, art, not trained in art and all that. So it was a slow journey for me. The first time I came into advertising, I was meeting a lot of people who had passed out of fine arts schools, people who had finished their studies in filmmaking, in all of those spaces, and it was very obvious the first time I came into a studio that the God was somehow having God. It was made to look like there was a big disadvantage if you had a faith, and if you believed in God, it was very, very difficult. You are not creative. So some kind of a disconnect between that I could sense. And it was very difficult for me to slowly work to kind of bring out ideas, to share ideas in a space like that. And I think that the rift has slowly widened in some way. But perhaps in recent times, when I look at some of the movements that are happening around the world, and also within the Jesuit movement, I think in the last month or so, there were two similar kind of gatherings that I was part of. One of them was called Illuminating the World, and it was a gathering of filmmakers, editors, and theatre artists from Kerala. So there were around 600 of them who had come on Zoom. So it was like an introductory gathering, and they were trying to talk about, what the idea of film, media, and all that, and it was happening in Kerala. Another gathering too, and then now this. So I think this is beautiful in the sense. It is some kind of a journey towards a reclaiming of this beautiful space that is perhaps being separated from faith, art, creativity, and skills, all those fine arts, all that. And that is why I think CreArt, how do you say that? CreArt, is it? CreArt itself is in some way a kind of a countering of that culture, and that's amazing. in some sense saying that, you know, at the heart of creativity, at the heart of creation is God. And that is a strong stance, and that is beautiful. And that's why I love to be part of this. And I love the word CreArt. In some way it also sounds very French. I don't know, CreArt, something. So, I've always felt that, you know, creativity that does not have, that does not impel us from because of some inner search is a very basic skill. I mean, it is more of a craft, a little bit of a craft that we do, and a lot of that happens around us, and that is beautiful. But generally, I feel the whole idea of needing to create, the whole impulse to create, arises as a response to the search for a meaning and a struggle for meaning, and sometimes also, you know, a celebration of a meaningful life. But perhaps the other side, there is also another side which says, you know, art is about meaninglessness. Art is art is an expression of our being lost in this world. So there is that narrative that is going parallelly. But it is beautiful that when John Paul II writes, Saint John Paul II writes his letter to artists, he kind of takes both into consideration. He says even the darkness that art brings in some way is a bridge. In some way it reflects even art that is sometimes confusing, that is dark. In some way it is a metaphor for the kind of search for redemption, the search for meaning and all that. And I know even Jordan Peterson, he speaks of the need to pursue meaning rather than happiness, and that is one of his whole pitches in life. So in some sense, I mean, this meaning is our search for meaning, our search for making sense of what's happening around us is at the heart of creating something, of writing, of taking a picture, of putting something together beautiful. Is in some way my response to this search is something that I've been thinking about. This is that quote from St. John Paul. Even in situations where culture and church are far apart, art remains like a bridge to this religious experience. And when they explore the darkest depths of the soul or the most unsettling aspects, even perhaps exploring evil, artists give voice in a way to the universal desire for redemption. So in some sense, this is in that sense, all spectrum of that is in some way pointing to God, which is beautiful, which is against what many of the art people would like us to think that. So even the search for God, even the darkness in art points to the need for God, and that is what I think we could say as a foundational thing as we start towards this, start the journey. Also, one more quote that I like from this, was for, he was speaking of religious music, and Pope John Paul II says, religious music builds bridges between the message of salvation on one side and those who, on the other side, who are not fully accepting Christ, are sensitive to beauty. For beauty is a key to the mystery and a call to transcendence. So that beauty is something that universally we can relate to, even if we haven't fully accepted Christ, or even if we are questioning all those premises. Beauty is that bridge. So that is a good point for us to start about why creativity and why art and why are we discussing all these things. And personally, for me, it is something that I've struggled with. Initially, for me, writing, music, all that was more, I would say, an expression of myself is something. It was something that I used to say, and then I realized that there's, my expression is very limited in that sense. At some point, I mean, It is my expression is somehow does not contain many of those things that God would want. So many of these things that will connect to others. So my expression is beautiful, but I also, in a sense, there is this element of something more than me in creation. Is something that slowly evolved on me, and this Psalm 146, verse 1, I will praise the Lord as long as I live. I will sing praises to my God while I have my being, is something that touches me, moves me very much. It is in the Divine Hours Pocket Edition Monday reflection. So yesterday I reflected on it. While I have my being is something beautiful, and having being is something, from nothing I have being. I have being, I can sense, and I know that this being of what I am being now, and this something that we call consciousness or being, is very fragile. It's a gift that I have, that all of us have, and that is enough reason for me to, express myself, to respond to that and all that. Yesterday, last week, I was having a slight medical issue. Like I was suddenly seeing, lights around my eyes and all that, kaleidoscopic vision and all that. So I was taking a tab, and I had to go and to the doctor, and he changed the tab, and I was fine. So, but during that little time when I had this, these colors around my eyes and slight disorientation and all that, I was not being myself. In some way, I thought even a small, a small tab that you take can kind of change your being. So I was in sense, I was thinking, so fragile. The being that I have is so precious, so fragile, and in some way, everything beautiful that I try to do, that I attempt to do, is my praise to God that I have being, that I am here, that I am in this place, that I can tangibly see, touch, and I can communicate, and I can express myself, all that. So in some sense, it's also a big thank you, a big sense. And Pope Benedict, when he speaks of creativity, he says, creativity, innovation, a new song, a new culture, all that are not mutually excluded from the presence of an entire cultural heritage. So there is somehow the art space makes it think that creativity, innovations, everything that we think new is different from, or is away from the cultural heritage what we have. So he says they form one reality, and they are the presence of God's beauty and the joy of being His children. That is, in a sense, creativity, innovation, all that. So saying that, I would also I will always think, because I do not come from like a very trained categorized. Like around me, I have people who have learned film for years, who have studied art, fine art, maybe graphic art, commercial art, all that kind of things, which are like templates of art, or very specific categories. But I feel it is often about a fresh perspective. Anything can be creative, and creativity can be a lot more than the boxes that the art world has currently shows us, in the sense, all those boxes of craft, sculpture, all those regular boxes. Creativity is definitely something beyond it, something a surprisingly fresh perspective, or a life-giving response to any situation. Is something is creative. So that is where our impulse to create comes from. We were discussing about that. Where does this impulse to create, to express ourselves come from, and what is that? And I have some scattered thoughts around this, which is what I will share one by one. So this is scattered thought one, and the thought is eyes wide open. So in a sense, it is also because uh, I feel that anything creative, the inspiration, insight will come from around us. Uh, and the need to look closely around us, the things that where we are set, where we are seated, and the people that are around us, and the places, and that looking is very important, because mostly this generation is about cursory glances, is about skimming over, is about glossing over, rather than looking, taking the time and looking at things. So the need to have our eyes wide open is something I felt was very relevant in how I was inspired to do certain things, or I was inspired to make little journeys within me, to not gloss over, but to look closely around, however insignificant things seem to be, around our life. There is purpose and meaning in places, people, and situations and things around us, in the way they are arranged, in the way they are not arranged. There is joy, inspiration in little things. And even when there is struggles, to even if it's difficult, to look unflinchingly at those difficulties, and to look so that we can see the redemption beyond it. So this looking is very important. It looks like a very, abstract, abstract and deep thing, but actually it's a simple thing to start looking around the places where we live and we work. I like Mr. Bean a lot, so I thought we should have a clip of Mr. Bean anyway. I was trying to think how we can include Mr. Bean in a presentation, so this is where I bring him in. This is from his famous speech about Whistler's mother's painting.
I'm Dr. Bean, apparently, and my job is to sit and look at paintings.
I mean, that is an amazing job. His job is very simple: to sit and look at paintings. In some sense, I mean, that's how I feel. Like sometimes you just sit and look at what God's doing in your life. You are like so caught up, and you're trying to do something yourself. And Mr. Bean kind of puts it very simply. My job basically is to sit and look at paintings. And you make those noises that Mr. Bean makes. It still works. So in a sense, I think God is calling us to, creativity is an art, and all that is to sit and look at what God is doing. I think I should play that one more time, just for myself.
Hello, I'm Dr. Bean, apparently, and my job is to sit and look at paintings.
So, because it is a world that distracts us from actually looking at the people around us, looking at little things. Because this is something that I wrote in my blog many years ago, I think 4 or 5 years ago. My cable guy offers me 600 channels. I get breaking news, global, regional, live sports, stock market updates. When celebrity couples break up, I get to know about it even before the couples themselves know about it. Digital clarity, surround sound 24/7. I have a mobile phone with so many games, arcade simulations. And when I'm not talking to one of my 4,499, and that's exactly true, because I thought I needed to update how many contacts. So I looked at my phone and there are 4,499 contacts, which scared me really. In the car, on foot, in auto rickshaw, I see billboards. On an average, so many 1,500 mainstream feature films are released in India. That was in 2019. So thankfully, there'll be a lot less this year because of the lockdown. Not to mention non-mainstream movies, documentaries. Penguin, Faber, Random House, HarperCollins together release hundreds of brilliantly written novels. Podcasts everywhere. Every minute, hundreds of hours of video uploaded to YouTube. So where is the time? Actually, my blog entry goes like, so where is the time for a twilight ride, a bicycle ride? So where is the time for poetry, which is like so nuanced and so small and so insignificant? Where is the time for to closely watch a flower bloom and all that? So that is the first thing, to look at things. This is a flower that I met in 2011, I think somewhere in Europe when we were doing a tour. So I kind of started, I was not a photographer actually, I kind of started photography with the idea of looking at things closely. And so I carry these things when I travel. And so this flower I have for the last 8 or 9 years with me. So sometimes I look at it. It was like a wild place. It was, and we were like doing some sightseeing, and I came across this flower. So this flower is long gone, but in some way, the looking at it gives it life, gives it some kind of significance, relevance. It's not there now, but it works in that sense. It works on me. It works on other people. So, but again, photography can be a distraction from it can prevent us from looking. Because if you look at many of these, how we use photography these days, it is an excuse to not look mostly. You record it, so you have it. And so these days, sometimes I deliberately leave things behind so that, I can just look at things. Because if you have the camera, you only see it in, in those, in that template. And you're always thinking about whether the light is good, whether the frame is working, and all those kind of things. Just like sometimes our chats and conversations also can be a way of not talking. It can be an excuse not to talk, to actually chat and to actually send messages, and all that can become a way of, it can become a running away from conversation. So in that way, photography is also slightly suspect now. But, being aware of it, I think, is very crucial. So I still am in love with photography. So I still do it, but I constantly remind myself, you could get into trouble. So that is the looking of it. And what do we look at? For me personally, the places we occupy, and the places that occupy us, many places. So these are the spaces around which, the ideas come. And my entire work has been around these spaces. And in some sense, when we say the place, it also means, where God has placed in that sense, put us, that is where, and that has meaning, there is a purpose within it. And that slowly evolved. Earlier I used to think you needed to, break away from home, have a big backpack and live outdoors, completely cut away from civilization, and you'll be very creative. And, the more ruthless you are, the more ruthless your no is to urbanity and comfort and luxury, and the more yes to a rugged, very outdoorsy kind of life, gypsy, all that kind of living is creative in a sense. But slowly I've come to realize that quite simply, it is the place. There is a meaning of why I am in a particular place, and that occupies me in a certain way, and I occupy that space, even physically. So there is creativity comes from that place which we live. So I think I would encourage you to go back and look at the place where you are, metaphorically, where you are in life at this point. That place is telling something to us, the place where we are. And the physically, the place where I am, like I have a very messy kind of a place here, and mostly Isabel leaves her toys all over, so every day evening we clean it up and all that. But that place is very important. I mean, the fact that the toys are around, and I clean it up, we have to clean it up every day, all that. That at this point of time, that makes sense. That is something that, I think about, and that goes into my writing, into my photography, into the advertisements that I make, and all that. So the place is very crucial. And that's also because when I think of place, I think of the places from which God has lifted me. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and the mire. He set my feet on a rock, gave me a firm place to stand. So there is that gratitude also. When I say place, it is I have a place in this world, and I'm not alienated is a very, is a thing that people use a lot. I'm alienated, and the whole thing that I need to move away from, I don't have a place, and all that kind of a thought. So place as an idea, I think, is very important for creativity and art and our inspirations and our journeys that we start. Some of the places that I have grown around. This is Cochin, Chelanam, and my father's place is a small village next to this place. This is like the beach, Chelanam. So my father's grandfather's village is called Pallipuram, near in Cochin itself. So this place of the sea and coconut trees and all that has been, I've been placed here in some way. So all this of islands and seas and skies and all that is something that I immediately recognize as mine, and as in some way, there is meaning why I'm here, and why not in a very, in a place of snow. And though I like snow very much, and I've never actually seen snow, in the sense, always when we travel, it's summer, and I've probably 1 or 2 times, like when we were in Europe, I've seen snow from a plane, but I've never really touched it. So it's always very fascinating for me. But this place, in another way, it is very, where it has meaning for me. The sea, the islands around it. So this was a series of pictures that I took. We were doing a film, and we were like, for days we were going back and forth, looking at the beach and kind of figuring out stuff and all that. So during that time, there was this whole series that I shot called Blues in C Major, because either way you shoot, it would be blue, and there was an overtone of blue on people and on the boats, and somehow even one of the images has a boat which still has blue. So it kind of when I go back and look at it, photography in a sense helps me to look at things that I wouldn't otherwise see. And blues in C major is also because blues is my favorite musical genre, and everything is blue here, and sea is a major thing in my life. Looking at the sea and living around, and in these pictures too, sea is a big thing. So somehow it all came together, and so this place as such is something that of boats and water and all that, and that is something I think the Lord has placed me here, or the Spirit speaks to me because there is a reason why I'm part of this. And I always think my mother comes from an island which is called Bolgati, next to the mainland Cochin. So there are a lot of poems that I've published are around island people. So there's a whole series called Island People. So when you live in an island, I started noticing people, they always think about when the next boat is. They always have a boat in their head. Even when they go to work, they are thinking, when does the last boat go back to Bolgati? Now there's a bridge, so that changes everything. But at least for 6 or 7 years ago, till there was no bridge. So they're always thinking, will I miss the last? If I miss the last boat, if I miss the 4 o'clock boat, will there be an 8 o'clock boat? So there is a boat always playing on their minds, wherever they are, whatever they're doing. So they come to the mainland to work and then go back. So one of my poems is about it. So it is about how place and the surroundings plays a part in your writing. So this is about a girl. It says, every morning she steps off the boat, cautiously picking her way through old women, dried prawns, pirated Paulo coilers, and beeping Chinese toys to board a red bus to work. So that's more or less like the jetty place where they get off. There's lots of toys being sold and women selling food, and of course pirated Paulo Coelho. Paulo Coelhos are everywhere. You see them on streets, people read them. So that sometimes when the afternoon sleeps, the air conditioner hums and her eyes droop. The tea man, let me see, I think I have to reduce this if I have to read this. The tea man passing stops for a minute to listen to the lapping of water against the old yellow hull of the evening boat, already docked and silently rocking in the cool green shallows of her swaying head. So the tea man who passes by can gently hear she's asleep. The green shallows and the boat silently rocking in her head. So it's a small picture, but in some way it is, if everything that I've written in some ways connected to the place and what the place does to people and how each place people are different. So in a sense, that is something that also God calls us to be sensitive to the places, the people, how they live, how they walk, what they think, and all that. It's slowly grown on me. In some sense, it also is a way of, looking at them and loving them and caring. So all that is being sensitive to the world. Another place that has played an important role in my life is the hill stations. My father works in a tea estate, used to work in a tea estate. This is a picture that I took, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. We were trying to make a small commercial for Kerala tourism, and then it was during that time. So we had to wait from 4-5 o'clock for the light to hit right. And so as I was waiting, I was shooting this. So in some sense, it was very different from the sea and the land and all that. As a kid, when I used to travel, there were no roads here. I mean, roads in the sense there was no traffic. So in one sense, it opened my eyes to look at green, to look at trees, nature. The whole idea of nature and everything came from this place. So I'm very grateful to this place. And often I travel back to Munnar. In key moments in my life, I have made this journey to Munnar. Like before I made my proper retreat, there is a bend that turns to Munnar, and sometimes I stop there. Before I got married and before I started moving into advertising, and I was kind of confused about that. So there is a bend there, and that is where the hill station starts. It's about 6 or 7 kilometers before Munnar, and you start to see so I somehow that place has some kind of resonance about it. I also think of it like a bend in my life, and where you stop and you get off and you think and you look at things. And so in some sense, places work like that, and that's why I shoot this place. And that's me in Munnar on the left. That's my family. And when they were in Munnar, my dad was. So I believe all this has meaning and purpose. And why was I traveling to Munnar? Why was my dad in Munnar? He passed away later. But all that, so to the places that we are and the people that we are connected to, and all that is very important. The place that I currently am is something like this. So I just went around looking at, where I'm sitting a few days ago. So you notice the hand sanitizer, which is very important. I noticed. So when I was shooting, I started to realize that there's a new thing that's coming up now that wasn't there for a long time. Wasn't around. And Indians never used to use hand sanitizer. So if somebody, took out a hand sanitizer in a restaurant, we would think that's very snooty and, that's very showy. You just wash your hands. But suddenly it is the in thing. So all these things, these pictures speak. When you look around, you see how culture is changing. You see how habits are changing, what is happening to a place and to people and all that. So it's beautiful to look around. And especially in lockdown, there's nothing else to do. So you look around. Secondly, it is the people around us. Scattered thought 3. I kind of forgot to say scattered thought 2. So I'm just saying it now. I'm supposed to say that in order. And the people around us, in my case, and the place have triggered, everything, all the beautiful things that I have worked around, all the inspiration and the people. So there's a certain kind of people, a certain set of people who have been with me in the journey throughout my life, who have slowly, got connected to me. And I feel there is a reason why I've met them and not other people. There's a reason why I could continue journeying with those people. There's a reason why many other people dropped off, and perhaps one of the reasons could be that I'm me and all that. But all that matters, I think, why people are there with me, why they're not there with me, and why exactly these people, and all that. And they've played a big role in the things that I've written, in my work, and everything. And I enjoy, I love those people. And though I fight with a lot of them, I'm so happy to have them in my life. You know, some of these people, the long-standing people in my life have been the Rex Band group, like around, the band itself has been there together for 25 years. So we met as students in Cochin mostly. So the extreme left is with Bishop Christopher Prowse in Australia, the band. The other one is somewhere in Italy. I don't know which city it was, Campania, somewhere like that. So this one is in Ireland. And the blue photo beneath is like 15 years of Stark. Stark is the agency that I work with. And most of the people I know for around close to 2 decades. And much of the work, the photography, the art, the filmmaking that I do with them and my family. So I think it is important to look at them, to constantly interact, to see what's happening in their lives, and to continually, you know, to continually interact on different levels together. And that is what has made me what I am. So I was sitting, and as I was putting this presentation together, I was realizing there's a lot more people, and I was calling up people and all that. So in one sense, it was good that I thought of this. So creativity is all of the work, the music that I've done, all have come from these people. Especially, I realize, you know, I came with you know, very mediocre kind sense of music. Very average kind of understanding of you know, how people work together, how music emerges, and my entire journey of where I am and what I am, all that came through these people. But more than music, it has also been, you know, maturing as a person and all that, and trying out new things, projects. All that has happened because of people. This, I don't know if you know this group. It is in graphic design, advertising. They are like very well known. They're called Pentagram. I don't know if you know Paula Scher. Paula Scher is one of the leading graphic designers in the world. She's known as an amazing artist. She's from New York. Pentagram is a New York-based collective of artists and designers, the world's foremost design. They are the ones she's the one who did the city logo, the umbrella, and I mean, so many brands, colors around the world she's worked on. And I like her work very much. But more than her work, this idea of a solo artist sitting somewhere and, you know, creatively struggling out, going through angst and all that is a very cliched way of how creative artists work. But actually, if you look at it, much of art has come out of movements, collectives, communities, and that is something that is happening. And I think that is what's happening in Jesus Youth right now. This idea of community, of a collective. Now the world would say collective is a very cool thing. You know, everybody is into collectives, and like in our office, you have so many collectives, about a poetry collective, and then you have illustrators collective, and anybody starts something. It's now, if you start a tea shop, it's like a tea drinking collective and not just a tea shop. So it's kind of getting over the top these days. But the whole thing, that there has been a shift from, you know, this artist in solitude thinking up things that are like big and coming out and suddenly revealing it to the world. Is, you know, there has been a movement from that kind of a perception of art and creativity to kind of a beautiful give and take, a beautiful understanding of each other, of drawing from each other, of being inspired from each other. So that is that is beautiful, and that is happening within us. And when I look at Rex Band, which is the collective, though we didn't know the word collective at the time, or we'd have said music collective, but we didn't know that. But still, when I look at Rex Band, this is exactly what has happened. People of different, understanding of music, liking different genres. We were not even, there's so many extremes within our band that to evolve a kind of music was like so difficult. On the one hand, I don't know if you know, but one of our musicians is Alphonse Joseph. He is like a very established Carnatic musician. And one of the priests who began our journey with us, Father Anthony Urlianikel, is like a Hindustani musician. He's like, he studied in Gwalior and all that. So he's like, extremist Hindustani musician. And then you have, and these people don't go together. Like Carnatic and Hindustani are like, if you know Indian music, they are at loggerheads with each other. Then they are like two schools altogether about how they interpret music, about how scales are interpreted in both these styles. They have very different viewpoints about those things. And then you have a lot of people like myself, Hector, and all of them who are into different genres of Western music and in different levels, skill levels and all that. And you have Stephen and all of them. So in some way, through all this confusion and mess, there has been harmony and music, which is I think the beauty of the community coming together and God working. And I think there is a call for us to come together in the Jesus Youth, especially. And that is why, and our movement is a people movement, and there is a great opportunity to speak to the world as a movement, as collectives, as groups, as communities. Especially I was thinking of the group that I met the other day, filmmakers. They haven't called themselves collective yet, but they are something like that. So this is the place and the people are very important to realize where we are, to be aware and to realize the people around us, and to consciously look at them and to interact and to think around that is something very important for my creative work. So everything that I know has happened around it. Thirdly, we spoke of a solitude and all that, but there was a great need for silence in my life at one point. I remember sometime around 2000, I was struggling after coming into the Jesus Youth, and after working, and even after being part of ministries, somewhere around 2001 to 2006 types, I was struggling with my faith, with even the very basic things like, does God exist, and all those things. So like that, and also the need for coming together and praying, the need for community, all that I was questioning within myself. I was confused as well. But slowly at the time, I was also being led to a kind of silence. It was very difficult for me. I've struggled with prayer ever, because I'm a very distracted person. To sit in one place and pray is something that very difficult with me, and I have to constantly go back and start again. It's very tiring, and you feel bad about yourself, and you're constantly saying, maybe is it like this for the other people, but you're afraid to ask because you're in the middle of them. And at this time I went into a retreat, and that is why I was so happy to see Brother Gillan led us through a retreat, and I was in a small convent in Palarivatam, which is very close by, and myself and Nanu, we were there, and we were also struggling with family. Anu had gone through a series of miscarriages, and it was a difficult time. And around that time, I think for the first time in this retreat, the theme was Christ comes to animate an inner festival within us. And I still remember that, and it is a beautiful theme, because I did not feel festive at all, and I was mostly trying to run away from things and trying to escape and be in a corner and get away from these people who are constantly calling me for prayer meetings and praise and worship and all that kind of thing. But sitting there in silence, and there were no talks in it. You know how a Taizé retreat is. It was the first time I'm encountering a Taizé retreat. Brother Gillan would take up some photographs, black and white photographs, and I love black and white photographs. So he would just put them up on the wall, and there would be photographs of masters from the Magnum series and all that. So I knew some of them, and he would say, let's look at these pictures. And so we would all just sit and look at pictures like for the whole afternoon. And then at the end, what is God speaking to you? He would ask in his very signature, he's a signature, very soft, as if he didn't want to disturb us at all. As if he was very apologetic even asking that question. He would just whisper those questions. And something would break within you. And then I realized that, there is something, a silence within me that is deep, and there are things, there is a large spectrum of things that I haven't seen, I haven't looked at, because I've been so busy with myself and the distractions that I've built around me and all that. So this knowing that there is a silence, these days sometimes it is difficult for me to tap into it, but even then I know that, because I know that there is this the beautiful presence of God, and that is a big silence within me that I'm comfortable with. And so sometimes even when prayer doesn't work for me, now I'm very clear. It works for me beautifully sometimes, but now I know that this getting in touch with this silence and the beauty of God in things without having to say things, and beauty of God that slowly reveals itself to us through inanimate things, through pictures, through all that is something that changed my life. And I did not need any persuasion about God's presence or anything. Just like that, I knew, and I was very clear, and I've never doubted it. So, so that is how art works, I felt. And I'm a very skeptical person. I always ask questions, but the beauty of those days and silence and art, it somehow cut through all the crap that I had around me, and connected to some place. So in that sense, this silence is very beautiful, and that's why Taizé has opened up something within me that I could continue within the movement, that I could genuinely relate to people and be part of the movement in a very authentic way, and not in a very peripheral way, and all that. So this and art helps us discover this. It asks those uncomfortable questions when you're alone with a painting, when you're alone looking at pictures, when it is not afraid to kind of prod you and probe you in ways that really cut through a lot of those defenses that we build around us. And scattered thought 5 is when I set out on a journey, like as a young person, I did not know that there was there's a lot of things that I'm involved with now. It would be music in a large way because of my involvement with the Rex Band, and the albums that we've created, the tours that we do where we meet young people, and the missions that we involve in animating young people and all that. Another part would be the poetry that I write, and it is another part, but it is all connected. It is the same experience that I take as a poet or as a writer. Another part would be the advertising that I do, the design. Another part would be the photography part of me. But I did not know that, all of these. I somehow thought that, I was a musician, which I really wasn't. And I had a very bad idea about myself, I realize now. And some way I thought that having God would take away things from me and make me less of a, cool musician kind of a person that I was, that I thought I was. But slowly, encountering God has actually opened up spaces within me that are so beautiful and so different that I never knew these things were inside me. For instance, I love songs, and I have a great love for music, and that's why I always think God works. He has already a plan, and He works within those. It's not an external thing that He puts from somewhere else into your life, your creativity. It's been there all along, and it is something that you like and you love. And I've seen in young people this great fear that if I say yes to the Lord, I lose something, and I lose the creative part of me, and I become something and all that. So I thought I was a musician, but I came to Rex Band. I realized that all of them are proper musicians, and I know a little that, little this, and I can sing a bit and all that. But just being with the group, and slowly I realized that there is something called songwriting, and slowly I started with the support of others. I slowly started getting into writing the songs of it. And then I realized that that's something I love doing. And then I realized there's a big science behind it. There is a great craft. So I started getting into songwriting courses. I started analyzing the songs that work. I can instantly nowadays break them into syllables. Like this is one of the songs of the Rex Band called Fortress, which is one of our early songs, but I like very much. Which we redid during this lockdown. But I didn't know anything about songwriting, so I started out just writing songs. But now in my mind, if I suddenly take a line, you surround me like the bright morning star, you surround me like the bright morning star, I will immediately be thinking 9 syllables, so accented on one, accented on, unaccented on the other. So it's like that is the kind of pattern. So where do I break the pattern? So all these things, slowly the Lord has built the craft, and things have happened, and so there's a pathway that opened, something like songwriting. And over the years, it's been 11 albums, somewhere around close to 100 songs over the years, in different ways and all that. And even when I write, sometimes when I write for a secular project, a movie or something like that, I realize that everything that I've learned through Jesus Youth. And normally it's the other way around. People who come to these secular fields, they've usually learned things from a school, and then they bring it to sometimes to religious spaces. So I think that is something that God opens within us. That you think you're a singer, then God opens something that's totally beautiful, brilliant, and it has been inside you, and you love this very much, and you never knew it was there. So songwriting is something that opened up like that, and there's so much joy in that serendipity. Also, my love for seeing things. It's something that you see every day, but then seeing symmetry when two people walk, you suddenly get to see that they're walking in the same way. There is some kind of a symmetry. One person has got another leg lifted, but the other person has got the other left. But still, there is some kind of form and symmetry when people walk. And then there is a point when they come to the center and they're equidistant, and that's when you need to shoot. And all that is something that slowly emerged. And I'm not a photographer, not a person who's learned photography or cinematography or anything. But this love for images was somewhere within me, and I've never known that. But as I was led into advertising, and as I was led into things like that, this started to emerge. And then I started traveling with the band. So somehow the opportunity of seeing places, of looking at things and all that emerged. So I was saying that the Lord opens up things that you never would realize about yourself. Poetry is something that I've always tried when I was young, but it took some time for me to have an experience of life and all that, for me to make sense of it and to start writing poetry that actually resonates with people, that connects with people. Thomas Transtromer is one of my favorite poets. I've written a lot about him in my blogs and all that. But he's an atheist, in a sense. He's an agnostic, probably. But he says somehow, in one point he says, you could at least say that I respond to reality in such a way that I look on existence as a great mystery. And that's very Catholic, and it's very, very religious. And at certain moments, this mystery carries a strong charge so that it does have a religious character. And it is often in this context that I write. So, I mean, it comes from a strong charge that has a very, it is connected to God. And he's struggling to not say God and to write that. In this entire essay, you can see that, he knows that there is a religious undertone to it. There is something beyond him, but he cannot say the word God, and he's struggling to actually write this. So in that sense, I think poetry also was something that took shape because of that God's presence in my life, and how from little things, from little incidents, how things emerge, and it becomes like a coherent, cohesive kind of a picture, a word picture or form, is something that still fascinates me. And along this journey, I realized that all these things were not something that I would have figured out on my own. And so the need to give up to God and to kind of trust that, God knows those spaces beyond me and outside me, I felt was very crucial in my journey. And finally, this is my scattered thought 6, is to be Catholic is actually to be universal, to talk to everyone, is something that I've been wrestling with. But somehow, when I look at myself and some of the people that I know, to be Catholic is to be niche and to not communicate with but now I see a lot of Catholics who are beautifully, speaking the universal language. There is this tendency to immediately have a dichotomy that this is my secular work and this is the spiritual world. And especially it's a trap that we Jesuit can get into. All of us can think that there is a spiritual side to us, and then there is an artistic side maybe, or which is what I think St. John Paul II cautions us against. And he says this whole dichotomy of thinking that there is a secular, there is an art, there is a divide between spirituality and art, is a very dangerous place to go. And it is up to us as Catholics, as people who have encountered Jesus, to open up this space and to speak to everyone. In the Expand also, we've started as a group that is that clearly sings Christian songs. But even when we started, we had a thing that we should not, let us not do the concerts in churches or, a very spiritual in that sense places. Find people on the borders. But later as we progressed, we were also thinking that maybe there is a need for even communications, songs, art, expressions that is like truly universal and can, and I'm sure when Jesus speaks, it doesn't come through as spiritual, non-spiritual, it comes through as life. So I think that is an attitude change that I needed to have. And it slowly took some time to go beyond borders, to think beyond the kind of spiritual spaces also. And at work, I realized it was beautifully coming together, because I work in advertising and it's always about communication, and you need to have an insight, you need to have a consumer insight, you need to know what people are thinking, you need to arrive at an idea. And sometimes it's a struggle. Sometimes the whole project, the whole premise can be something that you don't, fit into. And then there have been times when I had to, say no and move out from the place altogether. Thankfully, the group with me have been helpful in discerning things like that. But there has also been times when, beautifully a Catholic, a Christian, and a faith perspective can play a part in your creativity in the secular world also. I remember 2 incidents. One is a recent song that I did for the movie, for the Malayalam movie called Virus. So they wanted to do a promo thing and they did not know what to start with. So this whole movie was about spreading the virus and how it spread in Calicut during the time when we had the Nipah infection in Kerala. So then, I had that thought that came, spread love like a virus. And they were like, all of them were non-Christians. And in a sense, they immediately latched onto it. They said, you write around it. And in some sense that went out. And I mean that whole song spread love instead of, divisions and all that. And that was at the heart of it, the theme of the lyric. So many others within the secular world, within the spaces that I interact with, also said it's good that you could do something that is very spiritual in a way. So there is spiritual, non-spiritual. I think this need to say something, need to connect to or speak in a way that is beyond spiritual, non-spiritual, but be spiritual across all spheres is something that the Lord calls us to, especially those in creativity. Finally, I remember this campaign, which is my most recent campaign for the destination Kerala. And this campaign, am I overshooting the time or anything? Just let me know, because my chat windows. Yeah, okay, I'll close. This was about a campaign for Kerala, and this came from the idea that from the insight that travelers to Kerala have been saying that there is something beautiful about people. Always they used to say nature, greenery, everything. But finally, in the last 4 or 5 years, we've been saying there's something beautiful about people and life. And they've been ranking people above greenery. And being from Kerala, I know there's something wrong with that, or there's some issue, because we know that Kerala people can be very intimidating and, can be very sarcastic and all that. So we wanted to know what was happening. So we did a bit of a research. And in some way, most of our target market is predominantly Europe. So most of the international travelers felt that there was something very genuine in the way, Keralais approach you. They approached you as if, as equals. And secondly, there was a way in which they accepted diversity. Thirdly, they were touched by how kids and family and people live together, probably because of the fragmenting of families and, people living as single entities all over Europe and all that. So I felt that in some way, promoting communities, families, local people. So we shot this entire campaign with real people, not models, but people who live in those places. And that was perhaps the first time in a travel advertisement. And in a travel advertisement, so always the travelers are in front. Here, in all of these ads, the travelers are somewhere in the background. They are part of the land, but you can see the travelers in the boat behind, or even here they are far away. These are real people who live in that place, take center stage. So in some way, there is the reality of the place, and the connection with humans led to that whole idea of human nature is something that we need to go back to. So perhaps we have become more, we have lost that sense of connection with each other, love, warmth, all that. And there were 5 ads, and it was also in Times Square for a long time. So it was one of the campaigns that went all over the world. So in a sense, being part of that and being part of this idea of leading up to this idea is in some way, is not something that, I would have thought of it consciously, but it emerged from the entire journey that we made within Jesus Youth over the years. And, even without knowing. And I know a lot of people in the secular world who work in different things would in a way, bring out what was within them in the creative work that they're doing. So, and the Lord is calling us to do that. So that is where we are. And Soli Deo Gloria, all glory to God alone. Thank you so much. I think I've gone off time and all that. Sorry.
Thank you so much, Shelton. I think, I don't know about everyone else, but I don't think your thoughts were so scattered after all. I think it was a very beautiful journey. And really, I could really see this beautiful integration of life that you were inviting us all into as you looked at the different aspects of creativity in your life. And whether it's, you know, looking at the things around you, the people, the places, and all that. So it's really beautiful to see that reflected even in this very beautiful presentation. It's so clearly captured in the way that you have presented yourself. So yes, it's so very beautiful. Maybe to touch on that fourth point that you mentioned about silence, maybe you could just lead us in a small time of silence. If you could sing for us, maybe the Fortress, or just a few verses, so that we can kind of take a moment to pause and to reflect on what the Lord has been speaking to us in this time, or you can just say a prayer, whatever the Lord inspires. And so after that, we'll have a few moments of silence. If anyone wants to remain on, we'll have some time for question and answers, and we can continue from there. So go ahead, Jen.
I think I will, there's the Lord is my shepherd, the psalm, we'll just sing the chorus of it. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. Amen.
Amen. I am sure the Lord will continue to speak to all of us and move in us. But maybe we can open it up for some questions, or if there was anything that particularly struck you, you can chat that in as well. So you can send that to Melissa, and we'll allow everyone we'll give a chance for a few moments for questions. Maybe just as a wrap up of the scattered points that weren't so scattered, he talked about eyes being wide open, the places that we occupy and that occupy us, the people that are around us, the silence that dwells within us, the journey of discovering ourselves in the Lord, and going beyond borders to be truly Catholic. So.
So now I'm hearing all of them together, so perhaps there is some kind of sense.
I think that's, go ahead, Melissa.
Okay, we have one question that came in. They said, thank you for sharing about the retreat experience in Taizé. Could you share how we can move into the silence even when our hearts may be anxious or in pain?
I think again, for me, it is, there are these small places and small cues that I have given to my mind over the years. Like this little prayer room is one such cue for me. I have a blue notebook, which I write down things like very unapologetically and ruthlessly. So I can't. But the moment I am in that place, I know that in some way, my mind has for years figured that if you are here, it is time to settle down and it is time to listen. It is time. So in some sense, I mean, very practically, I am saying there are a few cues that I have built around. If I've opened this book, that means there's no masks I have to write now. And it's scary, but I have to write. So I write. And so in some ways, I think also the Teze icons have a big resonance for me. So I have it in my playroom here. So even when we designed the house, we said we should have the Teze icon at the center of it. It's very important, or we'll go nuts. So that is things. In office, I have a few things. I have like a small, the Teze icon of friendship, which I have on my desk. And I have like 5 alarms that go off in different times during the day, because I get into a call, and our meetings can be really disturbing in the sense everyone's trying to sell something. There is a client involved, and then there is so much of a power struggle happening in most meetings that by the time you're out of it, you forget that there is something called Jesus Youth, there is Teze, and you are Shelton, and you've been journeying with the movement. All that can suddenly look like a distant dream, and so then the alarm kicks in, and I know, there are certain things that I do. Sometimes nowadays I'm doing that pocket divine hours. So whenever an alarm kicks in, I go into the divine hour for that time. So it's a pocket thing. It's a very small thing. So I just move out of office and do something like that. Otherwise, in times of real struggle, like I remember the time when my mother was going through chemo, and I constantly had to be with the Rex band, and I often get songs that are very lively, and I have to animate the crowd, and that's the last thing you want to do. That you're not in a mood to animate anyone, yourself at least, and then you have to like talk to a crowd, get them to do actions and all that. But at that time, I remember it was also not me alone. It was my friends who were very close to me and helped me get into that, the entire purpose of us being here. And I wouldn't have been able to convince myself, even though I'm quite, I could convince a lot of other people, but in times of great pain and distress, it's very difficult for me to convince myself. So I think having people, again, I think the answer is the same, and places and things that we can connect and build it over the years, because even it's very important to start having conversations with God so that you remember that place. I think that's why perhaps in the Old Testament, they always make a thing with a few stones so that and that place kind of, even when you are under struggle, that those stones probably remind you that actually God was here during that time. So, that makes a lot of sense. And so I think we need to build in those cues into our lives practically, as well as, and my family is a very crucial, in some sense, in understanding me, Anu and all of them, to kind of know that, this thing gets me triggered. So start your treatment right away. It's a cue that somebody can give you. But otherwise, even in suffering, I think when you're going through deep suffering, you need people also around you. You need somebody to kind of, in different ways. Yeah, that's what comes to my mind. And then once you start the journey, once you're before the Lord and you realize the presence of the Lord, I mean, that is all you need to do. The silence will flow forth. That is perhaps why all this thing of, even Brother Lawrence, is the presence of, realizing the presence of God is very crucial. And just realizing that, and from there, I think, the rest will flow out. So these are some things that I can practically think of. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that was beautiful. Thank you. We have one more question. Is it necessary to be vulnerable to create?
Yes. It is. Otherwise, you could create. There are some people but that I've seen, even in different spaces, they put themselves out there at least for the purpose of creation. But for us, I think for us, where our creation comes from God, there is this. There is also this call to be vulnerable, in the sense that Jesus was vulnerable. He was not afraid to get hurt, and he was out there. So in that sense, it is there. But if you ask me in a very literary, technical sense, I am, for a long time, I wasn't writing poetry, or because I had a kind of an image, and with a certain amount of technical skill, you can work and create things to a certain extent, which I would say more of it as a craft rather than art. I think that is the dividing line between craft and art. If you have enough technical skill and experience, you can create things that look like art, or into which you haven't poured yourself, into which you haven't struggled with actually creating that, but still it can be beautiful, and it can be impressive. But to move people somehow, when we look at great artists and all that, I look at Caravaggio a lot, the kind of struggle and the art that comes out, and all that is, I think there is a kind of putting yourself out there becomes very crucial. And it is a scary thing. And each time I think, if there is another way to do it, I would have done it like that. But then when I do it without that, it comes out very, mechanical and things like that. So it's not, but in the long run, I mean, it is also a human exercise rather than just a technical artistic exercise. It is also a human exercise to be able to put ourselves out there, and there has to be some point. I think of all those people who sometimes I think of those Coptic martyrs and all of them. There's some kind of putting out they did there, and we are only called to do that mostly in a metaphorical or in a symbolic sense. So definitely, as Christians, we are called to be vulnerable in a certain sense, and as artists, definitely also.
We had another question come in. How do you tackle tendencies of vanity, even when creating spiritual art, to keep the glory on God and not for fragments of glory in it for yourself?
Seriously, I don't know, but I'm trying. I mean, because the whole thing of, I created this is something that over the years, it has become a lot more, I mean, seeing people who are, a lot more skilled, and even looking at saints has been a very humbling experience. And looking at, I don't know, people like Brother Gillan and all of them, with great presence of God, there comes some kind of a very an innocence, which is something that you tend to aspire to, and then you suddenly see yourself. But it's something that I've always been struggling with, of this thing that I've created. How can it not be just about me and all of that? But I think slowly it will. There will always be that tendency, I feel, to. But as you grow, you become aware of what God is doing through you, and I don't know, in Malayalam you sometimes say, there is this phrase which is like, "Arkundendatre elima," in the sense, even spiritual. It is something like asking, who is as humble as me? I am really humble. Who else can be humble as me? So there is this aspect of spiritual pride we need to constantly guard against. And us being in art, in music and all that, we are very much suspect to that, because we are taking center stage, we are going out there and all that. And I think to a great extent that has been possible through the community that I live in, because we talk to each other, and being on stage as a community, you realize that you are weak on your own, and you do things are happening because God has brought us together as a community. Other than the community and a kind of a slow awareness of God's presence, God's awesomeness, God's bigness that builds over time, God's beauty that surrounds us, so that you forget about yourself at some point, which is a journey. Other than those things, I can't think of a very, a very practical step-by-step way of dealing with it. But being aware of God's presence slowly, like turn your eyes upon Jesus, look full on his wonderful face, and the things of this earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. Perhaps that's the only way, is to keep looking at Jesus, so that the clouds dissipate, and you're clear, and you only see the light of the other things slowly settle down and get darken out behind you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear.
Hi, Brother Shelton. I'm Nick. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. Thank you to the moderators for letting me speak extempore here. I didn't have a question, but I just wanted to say, Brother, what you said today spoke so much to me. What you talked about creating and kind of seeing God in that process. I'm someone that became a Catholic here about 9 years ago in the United States. I grew up a Hindu. I came to the States back in the late 90s and went to college here. And there are times when I kind of try to look back into my childhood, into that secular past that I had, and try to see where God was. You know what I mean? And today, as you were speaking, it brought back to me. I'm an oldie here, by the way, so some of you may not recognize what I'm kind of speaking to, but I'm sure Brother Shelton, you'll recognize it. There's a cartoonist in India called Mario Miranda. Ring a bell?
Right.
He was I think he's Portuguese, but he used to do cartoons for Illustrated Weekly, and then there was R.K. Lakshman, and these guys were, I used to, my dad had an active interest in that. I used to paint, and I kind of look back at those times that I was so interested in art, and I try to think, was God really there? And especially today, when we're trying to speak to a secular world where people do not connect with Christianity or with Catholicism, and there's a power to art that can kind of transcend borders, so to speak. And just very recently, after almost about 30 years, I picked up painting, and it just kind of came to me. It was like riding a bicycle. And I was watching a couple videos online, and it was exactly what you said. It was a secular video, and they were talking about classical Damascus, the oil paintings. And they said that this blue pigment was so expensive. It was only found in one place in Afghanistan, and painters used it exclusively for Mother Mary's veil. And this is a secular video, by the way. But Christian art was so mainstream, and they kept that, this most expensive, even more expensive than gold, for Mother Mary's veil. And that just kind of moved me to tears. I don't know why, but I just kind of felt like, I think maybe we've lost that, communication with the secular world through art today, and maybe something that we have to kind of work on. But I don't know, my mind's kind of scattered 1,000 different ways.
Like, summing it up.
I just want to thank you for this.
And just to add on to what you were saying, there was one part that I did not connect, did not speak, but it's the idea of mystery, like you said. it is something beautiful that it has become so, it has become very secular. The idea of mystery is now connected with poetry, and like Transtromer said, but it is at the heart of Catholicism, this mystery of being beyond you, and the beauty of not knowing. Like when I was a kid, I always thought it was a way of keeping people away from, not asking questions, saying it's a mystery. And then that's it.
Right.
The Catholic Church says it's a mystery, so full stop.
They call it the God of the gaps in atheism, when trying to read it. I hear
slowly as I grew, I realized that, it's not a simple template, mystery and, not knowing and knowing. Many of the people who really knew were not afraid to admit that they didn't know. And as I read through the saints, through a lot of secular scientists, people, and all of them. So this not knowing is a very important part of knowing. I realized the kind of saying out that you do not know, and that awe that comes from, there is a lot of things, there are spaces that we need to travel into, and the idea of eternity and all that is encapsulated in that word mystery, and that perhaps a shade of it comes through art and through poetry and all of that. A sliver of it, just a glimpse of it we see perhaps now. So that's beautiful. Thank you, Brother Nick.
So I think on that note, we can wrap it up for this webinar. I think it's just been such a gift to come together. I'm sure all of us have received so much. I think even just looking at some of the faces and the names that we have here, there's so much potential and so much possibility of what the Lord can do, especially as we look around and, like see how the Lord is moving in our lives. So thank you, Shelton, for facilitating this conversation, animating the inner festival within us through the Lord speaking in you and through you. And for all of us, we'll be continuing our webinar series. He had mentioned Brother Gilan, so he will be one of our speakers later in the series. So you'll get a little bit more of a taste of what he was sharing about. Next week, we have Father Juan Osorno, who will be sharing about the masterpiece and really that intersection of prayer and art. And we'll also be starting Intercession Week for the whole movement. So it'll be a beautiful time and a way to kind of see how the Lord is inviting us into deeper prayer through our art and through the masterpieces that he makes. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Like he said, it's very early in the morning for him. He's already done a full webinar and still has a job and a family and all those kind of things. So he's off to a great start today. For most of us, we're winding down our days, and hopefully there's a lot to continue to pray with and reflect with. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Shelton, for sharing with us, and have a good night, everybody.
Much for inviting me. A lot of familiar